Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Timeout with Doc and Caveman of this NBA season. My name is Dr. Fantasy Jordan Jaika, alongside here with the Fantasy Caveman. In today's episode, we're going to be going over our midseason awards. So we're going to go through MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, all of those fun awards. So, Caveman, what's going on? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's the second episode we're recording now. I'm excited to talk about our mid-season point. Well, we're not quite at the mid-season point, but
Close enough.
Close enough to talk about who we think's gonna win. All the MVP and all the other awards, like you said. A lot of good players to talk about here.
Yeah, a lot of elite players. So we'll start off with the most elite, which are the MVP candidates. Who do you have as your top few, and who do you ultimately have as MVP here?
All right. Glad you said top few, because this year it'd be impossible just to say one name and that be that. Let me start off by saying I don't think it's gonna be Giannis. But I'd like to see Giannis win MVP, of course. I just don't think
he's very good.
I wouldn't go that far. But I just don't think Giannis is having the type of season compared to some of these other guys. Shockingly, I don't think it's. I mean, maybe not shockingly. I don't think it's gonna be Jokic either. I know he's a very popular pick right now. But if you look at his numbers, they are actually slightly down.
He sucks.
Yes, he sucks. They are slightly down from the seasons a couple years ago where he actually won MVP. So I think, if people look at that, I don't know if you can necessarily give it to Jokic. Who do I want to win? I want Shea to win. I want SGA to win. I mean, you look at it. I mean, they're a top tier team in the West. He's averaging 31, 6, and 6. I mean, come on now. He's taking control over the OKC franchise. I mean, this is like, if it wasn't proven already, this is his team. It's going to be his team for years to come. And he's just taken that next step, in my opinion. You just look at the recent stretch we just got done talking about in the last episode, but they got their last few games. They have wins over Minnesota and Boston, who are leading their Eastern and Western conferences right now. So that's what I want to win. I do think Embiid's gonna win it though. He's gonna deserve it this year. He won it last year for, I guess, voter fatigue. I guess people just didn't want to give it to Jokic, although he should have won it last season. I mean, come on. I mean, you look at these numbers. These numbers are just ridiculous. First of all, he's leading the NBA in scoring at almost 35 a night, which is ridiculous, even in this scoring league. Check out these stats in December. He's shooting 61% from the field, 43% from three, and 92% from the free throw line in December.
It's not very good.
I mean, I guess if that's not good, I don't know what is good. He has the second best point differential in the league. And then, but the only thing that's going to hold him back, and if we remember this season, the NBA has a minimum threshold of games played for you to be able to win awards. And he's already missed 7 games this season. So he can only miss 10 more games the rest of the season to be eligible for MVP. So I think that is the only thing that's going to stop Embiid from winning MVP this season. So Embiid's my pick. I want Shea to win, though.
Yeah, I think Shea actually does have a chance because of what you said with the games minimum. And I think voter fatigue is real. I mean, we saw it with Jokic after back to back, but it's just a good story. And depending on what voter you ask, I mean, you could ask who's more important to their team. Is it Joel Embiid to the Sixers, or is it Shea to the Thunder? I mean, I can make a case that the Thunder would be one of the worst teams in the league without Shea. If Joel Embiid wasn't on the 76ers, I could almost make a case that they'd still be a playoff team. And
Well,
now
they still got Tyrese Maxey.
with Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris has been really good this year. DeAnthony Melton is very underrated as a defender and as a depth guard. I mean, they're a pretty good team overall. And I think the reason why the 76ers have a chance in the playoffs this year is what's around Joel Embiid right now. So, and that's not his fault. He's maximizing what he has. But I could make the argument. I think that the Thunder would be much worse without Shea than the 76ers for Joel Embiid. So if people are looking at it that way, I think Shea does have a chance. And I think it kind of depends on how the Thunder finish. Because you mentioned they're just getting hotter and hotter, it seems. And if they somehow finish number 1 or 2 in that conference, I mean, it's hard not to give every award to a Thunder player. I mean, this has been an embarrassing franchise for quite a while. I mean, we used to make jokes about them regularly every time we had an episode. And now I mean, probably the last episode we recorded a year and a half ago, we were mocking them. And here we are talking about them as a potential, I don't think they're going to make it to the finals this year, but you have to at least throw their name into it. And, they have a potential coach of the year, and MVP and rookie of the year, and even defensive player of the year, if you wanted to throw that into the mix. So that turnaround is amazing. And I think that story, and he is the heartbeat of that team right now. You can talk about Chet coming in and being strong, and Jalen Williams playing well, and all these young guys, but none of this works without him. And I think if they continue to be on this hot streak, I think it's almost too good of a story to not vote him MVP. But it is hard to argue just on paper with the numbers that Embiid has put up. I mean, he won MVP last year. And I mean, his numbers are better than last year already. Well, his field goal percentage is down a little bit, but his 3-point percentage is up, free throw percentage is up, more rebounds, more assists, more blocks, more point. Like, it's hard to argue against it. But
career high in assists.
It's all the above is just impressive with Embiid. Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 6 assists this season, which is stupid.
I mean, granted, he's not really becoming much. I think the Sixers are just playing more up tempo and like a faster pace, and
sure,
getting a lot of dribble handoffs that are resulting in assists. But still, I mean, it's made like those December numbers are crazy. I really think I love Shea and I want Shea to win. I think the games played threshold is the only thing. Because if Embiid, assuming Embiid keeps on this pace, which I think he will if he stays healthy, I think the games played threshold is going to be the only thing that ultimately stops Embiid from winning it.
And you have to imagine later in the season, if it gets down to, he's getting close to that threshold, unless it's a major injury, like he's going to play through it, right? Even if he's just taking a nap on the court for 20 minutes, because you have to play at least 20 minutes to meet the game minimum too, to be eligible for any of those awards. I mean, he might be taking a nap for 20 minutes, but he would think he'd be on the court for some period of time. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting battle. And then it's crazy to we're at a point where Giannis is kind of an afterthought, and obviously. But I mean, you look at his numbers too, and it's just in most regular seasons. I mean, he's averaging 31.5, 11.5, and almost 6 assists per game. And we're just like, nah, that guy's not going to win MVP. I mean, that's crazy. That's a crazy season.
It is wild. I mean, you got to think. I think that's kind of where having Damian Lillard now kind of hurts his MVP chances, because now they're like, okay, now you got because they got 2 of the top 75 players in NBA history on the same team now. So I mean, that's gonna it's gonna take some votes away from Giannis. Because to say what you will about Damian Lillard and his he's been he's been struggling recently. Jesus. But that's another thing. But he's still averaging, don't have the exact numbers, but I know he's averaging like 25 or 26 a game, getting 7 or 8 assists. He's still an elite offensive option in the league. So that's gonna kind of take away some votes from Giannis. So I don't think Giannis. I mean, I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think Giannis. I mean, if he has some historic back half of the campaign and Milwaukee runs away with the number 1 seed, I mean, if things click right now, I mean, I suppose it's possible. I wouldn't say he's out of it. Just like I wouldn't say Jokic is out of it, especially if, although I really don't see Jokic. I mean, I just don't think he cares enough to, put up those numbers. He does it so effortlessly that, whatever his numbers are is what his numbers are, and I don't see them giving it to him again. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But it's interesting that you make the point about Damian Lillard being such a strong 2. And I know over the course of his career, obviously, he's better. But Tyrese Maxey's probably been better than Damian Lillard this season. I mean, he's been that good this year. So why doesn't that take away votes from Embiid? And you're making the same point everybody else is making with the Embiid season, but that's kind of what I was saying with his surrounding core. So anyway, I think there's an interesting case
Tyrese Maxey doesn't have the name value.
Well, I would hope people voting for NBA MVP have a better sense than to look beyond the name. And Damian Lillard has been good, but I mean Tyrese Maxey's having a crazy season right now.
But you got I mean the numbers for Embiid, I mean you just gotta I mean the ultimate the voters are love looking at the numbers that guys are putting up.
I'm just trying to make it interesting. I'm not trying to hand Embiid.
I mean, the bottom line is it's Embiid's award to lose as long as he makes the minimum game.
Most likely, yeah, most likely. All right, let's go to Rookie of the Year. This is probably a 2-horse race here. So, who do you favor right now?
Man, yeah, but this is like. I can't remember the last time any award was like so narrowly down to 2 people. I mean, no offense to what Jamie Jaquez, I don't know exactly.
Oh yeah.
That guy, but he's just sorry. He's like super long distance third. It's not even but as you know, we're talking about Chet and Wemby. Look, I think it's gonna be Chet. And I think and this is probably a basic take, but it is what it is. The Thunder are winning, and the Spurs are not winning. And I think unfortunately, I think that's what it's gonna come down to, and that's why I think Chet's gonna win it. I mean, even if you look at his season he's 4th in the NBA in blocks, averaging almost 3 a game. I mean, I'm pretty sure Wemby's probably averaging around the same. But I mean, Chet's shooting 54% from the field, 40% from 3. So, but this brings up a point, and I think it's a somewhat valid point. Do you think some voters are going to sour on Chet because I mean, technically he's a rookie, but he's redshirted. So do you think that's going to weigh in the minds of any voters to kind of potentially sway away from him?
Yeah, I would say 100% yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think Chet's going to win it. Just because, I mean, granted, Wemby's as advertised. And that I gotta give him credit. It's very hard to come and live up to the hype, especially when you have as much hype as Wemby. There hasn't been somebody coming in with this amount of hype probably since LeBron, to be
Yeah.
honest, in terms of just overall hype. I mean, he's having a season. I mean, he's having a solid season, averaging 19 points a game. But part of the knock, the biggest knock against him, I would say, is, I mean, you look at his efficiency is really not good. I mean, he's taking 16 shots a game to score 19 points. That's not good, I would say. And they're, like I said, they're losing, and I don't know whose decision this is, whether it was Popovich or whoever, but this Jeremy Sohan experiment at point guard, I don't know what. And you like Jeremy Sohan coming out of the draft.
No, I hated Jeremy Sohan coming out of the draft.
No, you liked him. You just don't like how high the Spurs picked him.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fair.
But like, I just don't like what. They have so many. Trey Jones is a better playmaker than him. Devin Vassell's a better playmaker than him. I don't get why this Jeremy. So I just don't understand it. I think not that that's really like affected Wemby's Rookie of the Year chances, because I don't think
they would still suck either way. So does it even
they would
matter?
suck either way. But it just bothers me. I think that I think Wemby could look even better if they weren't doing this weird Sohan experiment at point guard. But what's your take on the Rookie of the Year race?
Yeah, I mean, they're just trying to find somebody at this point who can play with the ball in their hand, because Wemby has the ball in his hands a lot. And Trey Jones is, I think, just a high-end bench guard. I mean, I don't think that he's going to be the future point guard of the Spurs by any stretch of the imagination. Keldon, Vassell, none of them are very good with the ball in their hands. So they're just trying anything just to see what they have in the future, I think, at this point.
Sohan's not good with the ball in his hands either, apparently.
He was, until they said be our point guard, and then he forgot how to play basketball. But yeah, I think that if the season ended today, I do think it would be Chet. I think Chet has been better up to this point, but luckily for Wemby, it's an entire season. And I think even the strides he's made over the last 10 games are so immense. You can only imagine where this is going to go for the rest of the season. I mean, he's already averaging over 50% from the field, 34% from three over the last 10 games, averaging 24 points with almost 5 blocks a game, by the way. So he's already making improvements in efficiency. And if that continues throughout the course of the season, I think that he's going to pass Chet. Because I don't think it matters how good the teams are. And we always have to find a way to bring up Michael Carter-Williams, right? I don't think it mattered when he won Rookie of the Year how the Bucks performed. Believe they were the worst team in the league that year. But even if you look at Rookie of the Year historically, usually it doesn't really matter what the results of the team are, because they understand if your best player is a rookie, or one of your best players is a rookie, you're probably not that good. That's just the reality.
You got a point about. Oh man, I love me some Carter Williams.
I know.
But you got a point to an extent. But if we're talking, because this race is close. If you're looking at, okay, I'm deciding between Chet and Wemby, who have similar, stats, I think you're gonna lean more towards the guy that's winning when you got a close race between two.
Maybe I could argue the other end too, where similar to you said with Damian Lillard just having that name appeal, right? Can you imagine with all the hype that came in with Wemby, it being a toss-up and not giving him the Rookie of the Year? It just feels like the NBA wants him to be a poster child for the NBA. That's just, let's be honest about it. Especially an international player like that, if he thrives, it makes the NBA a more profitable business. That's just the reality. So I think the NBA will want to push the narrative, if it's close, that Wemby's the Rookie of the Year, just because it makes him more marketable, and it helps just build that brand for him. It's a fun race, though. I mean, you can't, like I said, you can't argue, but I think Holmgren's been better up to this point. But I mean, it's so close. I mean, we should have talked in the first episode when we just want to talk about the season. I think the Spurs need to get rid of Greg Popovich. Honestly, I think that their roster is way better than how they're performing. When you look at just their team and the talent they have as a whole, I mean, Keldon Johnson has been good.
He's coming off the bench right now, right?
I don't know what's going on.
Their second best players coming off the bench.
There's just so much weirdness going on, and I don't know if it's because they're rebuilding and they're just trying to see what they have. But then you have like Doug McDermott playing, and it just feels like a mess right now. When I just look at the pure talent of Devin Vassell being an offensive threat and a great 3-point shooter, Keldon Johnson is average over 20 points a game in a season. You have Wemby now. Like they should. I'm not saying they should be in the playoffs, but they should be a little better than what they're playing right now, and it just feels like they keep taking steps back. So that's a whole other conversation.
They were a playing team last season.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like a mess right now, and we talked about it the last time that we talked about the Spurs probably a year and a half ago now. But I mean, there comes a time where the game is just past you, and I think that we are at that time. We were at that time 2 years ago with Greg Popovich, and I think if he had at this point though, he sees Wemby in a potential path to future championships. So I guess if he can pad that legacy a little bit, why not? But no one's talked about the alternate scenario. What if the Spurs just continue to stink and Wemby, similar to like how Luka hasn't really lived up to playoff expectations with the Mavericks? What if it's 5 years from now and the Spurs are still kind of just this borderline playoff team? They lose in the first round. I mean, how much does that hurt Pop's legacy? It probably won't, but I think that it should because it looks embarrassing to me.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Bill Belichick with England. I just think it's time. I mean, the Spurs on paper, if you give them a more modern coach, they're not a bad team. They have players that can play ball. It's just not Popovich he's credit where credit is due. He's going down as one of the best top 2 or 3 coaches to ever coach basketball, but I just think it's time. I'm sure he can do a lot of other things, but coaching the Spurs probably shouldn't be one of them going forward. But
it will be.
much like Belichick, I feel Popovich is going to coach until he doesn't want to coach anymore.
100%. Yeah. 100%. All right, that was we went on a tangent, but I like that. Defensive player of the year. I think this is an easy one, but I want to hear what you have to say.
You think it's easy? I
do.
Trouble picking between like 5 names. So I'm gonna go Rudy Gobert.
Who are your other names?
I was considering Anthony Davis. But I can't trust that he's gonna stay healthy enough. Giannis' impact defensively, he's have to give consideration. Crazy enough, I think you have to consider Embiid as well. But ultimately I'm gonna give it to Gobert. I mean, I think Gobert's I wouldn't say bounce back, but I think he's kind of reminding the league that he's a defensive force.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He's leading the. We talked about in previously how the Timberwolves are allowing the fewest points per game right now in the league, and I think Gobert is a major part of that. And so I just like. I would give it to Gobert, although I'm interested to hear what you had to say because you said it was so easy for you to pick, and I just couldn't pick. So
It's
what do
definitely
you?
Rudy Gobert. I
I was
mean,
gonna say, like who, like what, like what, like.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely Rudy Gobert. I mean, the Timberwolves are the best defensive team, like you mentioned. And typically, I mean, I feel like that's the way Defensive Player of the Year is determined. You look at the best defensive team in the league, and then you pick out their best defensive player. So the way that Rudy Gobert's turned it around with that team and the way they're playing right now, I think there's no doubt that he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year at this point. Let me ask you an interesting question. I did not know this until I did a little bit more research prior to looking through this episode. Do you know, after the Timberwolves, who allows the fewest points per game defensively right now?
I have a 1 in 31 chance. Is it Philly?
No, they are definitely up there. Philly, Boston, both towards the top there. You have a 1 in 29 shot, by the way. This isn't the NFL.
Oh.
It's like, not to call you out, but I'm calling you out. Sorry.
That's
no,
fair.
You're not going to get this. This is unbelievable to me. I would have never guessed this. I could have went through all 29 other teams, and that would have been one of the last teams that I said.
Is it the Wizards?
Oh, no, it's definitely not the Wizards. I promise you. They're allowing the most points per game, and by a pretty healthy margin, if I may add. It is the Houston Rockets.
Okay.
I mean, we should talk about the Rockets because the last time we talked about them, I was not a fan, but you got to start taking notes on them. I didn't love the Fred VanVleet signing in the beginning, but that proves it right there. The Dylan Brooks signing was stupid just because of the salary, but I mean, he's had an impact defensively as well. But I mean, the way they're playing defensively is super impressive. And then you have Sengun having just an absolute breakout season. They're a team over the next few years, kind of, the same leap we've seen the Thunder take. I think we can see the Rockets take that leap soon. But that was just an interesting note to throw in there with Defensive Player of the Year. I was just shocked to see that an opponent's point per game, the Houston Rockets were second. Let's go over to head coach then. Two teams. Well, some teams we've talked a lot about. I think once again, as of now, this is probably a two-man race, although you can always throw other names in here. But who do you have for Coach of the Year right now?
There's a couple of names you could throw out. I'm gonna go Chris Finch of the Timberwolves. I mean, especially if they somehow hold on to that number 1 seed, I think it's a lock. It's always safe if you got a team that wins their conference, that going in you didn't expect them to be anywhere near the top, and that team wins their conference, that coach probably is a very heavy favorite to win Coach of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's a couple, and you gotta go a couple of names really. I mean, you got. I think we just talked about Houston. I think you can give Ime Udoka some love for
sure,
Coach of the Year. I mean, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Mark
Dagnall,
from the Thunder. You can give him some love for Coach of the Year, but I'm gonna go Chris Finch. I mean, the Timberwolves, I don't think anybody expected the Timberwolves to be this good right now. Which means this is another thing. We got to talk about what kind of connection Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert have. Because I don't know what goes on there, but, like, since they paired up, like, Rudy Gobert is, like, we just got done talking about Defensive Player of the Year. Mike Conley unlocked something in Rudy Gobert. I don't know what it is, but
you don't want to know what it is.
I don't know why I know what it is, but, like, Chris Finch has these guys playing defense. A lot of guys that really haven't been known for defense in the past. Anthony Edwards, not that he's like some outstanding defender or anything, but he's not a huge liability anymore. At least this season defensively. You just got this team. They're playing defense. And they got the best record in the Western. The Coach of the Year is one that's insanely wide open. You could throw a ton of names out there. You're basically just picking one out of the hat. Say, okay, I'm going to give it to this guy. I don't think very rarely is there ever a name that you say is bounds ahead of anybody. So I went with Chris Finch.
Yeah, and I think that Chris Finch probably would be the choice if the season ended today. I personally still favor Mark Daigneault, just what he's done with that Thunder team. But some other names that I don't think are being talked about enough are Rick Carlisle with the Pacers. The Pacers had no expectations, and we saw what they did in the in-season tournament. They're the 7th seed in the East right now, and they're a young team playing super well. So I think you at least got to consider what he's done with the Pacers so far. And then the other one that I'm very, very surprised isn't talked about more, because I think that he should be not the leading contender, but one of the top contenders in the league is Jamal Mosley of the Magic. The Magic are sitting as the 4 seed right now. This is a team that 2 years ago had the first overall pick. They were one of the bottom 5 team. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the bottom 5 last year. They've been bad for many years, and to have a young squad like that and to turn it around that quickly, I think is impressive. So I think Jamal Mosley deserves some recognition for that job as well.
What's the Magic?
Nobody cares about the Magic. I'm going to give a Magic player an award later, actually. So we'll give them some love.
Okay.
Actually, wait, that's right now. So, who do you have for your 6th man? That's the next one that I have listed here.
Oh, that's interesting. You're going to go on Magic player. This one was also an interesting one, because here's the thing. And this is the one I struggle with the most, because it seems like this season, there's not a lot of those, like, typical Jamal Crawford 6-man types.
Sure, yeah.
In the league this season, You got a lot of these, like, tweeners, you got guys like Austin Reeves and Caruso who have split time between starting and coming off the bench. So can you really consider them the 6th man? Jordan Clarkson's been starting now, so you can't really put him into the equation. So it's a tough one, because I'm trying to find a guy that is like a legit 6th man. And I came up with Malik Monk.
Yeah.
Of the Sacramento Kings. When I think of Malik Monk, I think of like the prototypical spark plug off the bench.
Definitely.
And I think you also got to consider him and De'Aaron Fox were teammates in college. You got to account for that factor of why Malik Monk's been having a solid good season, shooting 45% from the field, 42% from 3, 88% from the free throw line. So I think he'd be my pick, just because I don't think there's a ton of prototypical 6 men. So I didn't want to give it.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you were to get like Reeves and Caruso would be the 1 and 2 if you actually consider them 6 men, which I don't. So
yeah, and technically, by the definition, they are 6th men, but barely.
So I don't want to do. I didn't want to go that route, so I went Malik Monk.
But I think Austin Reeves, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out, is probably not going to be eligible because he should be on the floor in their starting lineup. I mean, he at times has been their best player in some games. And I know that's hard to say with LeBron and AD on the same team, but I mean, it's been he's taken over some games for the Lakers. So, yeah, I would be shocked if he ended eligible. I mean, he shouldn't. I mean, honestly. So, the one thing I like about Malik Monk, I was actually considering my top few were Reeves, Malik Monk, Tim Hardaway, and then the guy who I chose. But the one thing that I think is impressive about Malik Monk is he's taken on a lot bigger role on their second unit. He has been that stereotypical, just comes in, shoots 40% from three, just get me some points, get me some buckets off the bench kind of player. But he's averaging almost 5.5 assists this year, which is not very typical of what he's been thus far. He's only averaged over 3 assists once in his whole career, and his career average is only 2.6. And I mean, he's been in the league for 7 years now, so it's not a small sample size. So I think that's the part that's been kind of impressive, is he's elevated and changed his game and been, I mean, we haven't talked about the Kings really at all, but I mean, they're the 5 seed right now, or 6 seed in the West right now. So I mean, they're having an impressive season as well. So I think that's a great pick. I picked, just for similar reasons, we just talked about the Magic, I had Cole Anthony, and I also was looking for somebody that was a little more traditional and not starting. I mean, he's played 35 games, hasn't started one of them. Malik Monk's the same, by the way. He has played 34 games and hasn't started any of them. So I agree with you. I personally like that traditional, like they're truly your sixth man. But the Magic, he's been critical to their second unit. And this Magic team as a whole, I mean, their whole calling card has been their depth this year. They regularly are rotating through, 12 guys every single night, which is crazy in itself. And he's kind of been the anchor and the leader of that. So when you talk about the leading scorer on the leading bench unit in the NBA, I think he has to be in the conversation for it. So I picked Cole Anthony of the Magic.
That's a very fair. I wouldn't be mad at that one either.
I don't think he wrote down. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I have him. I might have him in our dynasty, the Mafia dynasty. So I'm okay. I'm okay if he. He can keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah, it's good to see from him too. I mean, and not to say he's played with the Magic since they drafted him, but he was super efficient when he came out his first few years. And I remember when we did his prospect profile, I think that might have been the first time we did prospect profiles, and we talked about him having superstar upside with his playmaking and his scoring ability, and he's never really lived up to that. So, not to say being sixth man of the year is living up to superstar potential, but he's at least shown flashes that he can be a really important piece of a really strong contenders team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you wrote down. I threw in there. Did you put down most improved player? I don't think you did.
I did not, but I did. You did mention it, so I did come up with some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I remember doing this prospect profile like it was yesterday, because I loved him, you loved him. It was almost a foregone conclusion he was going to be a superstar, but that's Alperen Sengun of the Houston Rockets, who I still feel like he's been in the NBA longer for some reason, but at 21 years old is averaging 21 points, 9 rebounds, 5.4 assists for a Rockets team that's right now in the playoff chase. I think he has to be in the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I mean, to me, it's never a two-man race in this case, because you can argue lots of guys have made major improvements. Scotty Barnes is another one.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, realistically, at this point, it'd probably be Tyrese Maxey. This award typically goes to that guy who goes from, hey, he's a solid player, to, oh, okay, is he a star now? Like, that's just typically where this award goes. Like Lauri Markkanen, for example, when he won it, I think that was last year, maybe 2 years ago. It was just, he was always a solid role player, but he took that step into where we had to ask ourselves, like, okay, like he could actually be a star player. So I think it's the same with Tyrese Maxey, even though he's 23. And Sengun, I think his biggest disadvantage is being 21. I could see him winning it next year if he takes another step forward, where he's averaging 25 and 10 next year, but it'll be hard to beat Maxey, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, Max is averaging a career high in points, assists, rebounds. He's the second best player on in my opinion, a title contender in Philly this year. So I mean, it's hard to argue that. I mean, Sengun's been having a season, for sure, and he's a big part of why the Rockets have been a pleasant surprise, this season. But it's those two, and then you mentioned Scotty Barnes. When we talked about him a little bit, when we talked about our thoughts on the season in general, but even a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is with Tyrese Halliburton is we already saw flashes of this last year, of this, Tyrese Halliburton is so close to superstar status right now.
Yeah,
He's
is.
not there yet. I don't think he is, but he is so close. And to be this close and not give him at least some consideration, for most improved, I mean, and then the other name I wanted to throw out, he had a very hot stretch, Kobe White.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
Man, I'm so happy that Kobe White is doing good, because he's just, I don't know what I don't know why it took him a little bit longer than I expected to really get off the ground, and kind of, I think injuries have played a huge part, kind of with LaVine, especially with LaVine missing time this season. Kobe White's been, they ain't nobody take advantage of an injury opportunity like Kobe White has. And that's what's that's what makes me nervous about it with LaVine back now. What's that gonna kind of do for Kobe White? But I think Kobe White is also a name you gotta throw in there.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting name because I feel like he's been in the league for this is his 5th year in the NBA, and he's only 23 years old. Like, in today's NBA climate, we forget that, I mean, when you have all these one and done guys coming out, I mean, you can play in the NBA for 5 years and still only be 23, and we tend to give up on players so quickly in today's league. So it's just a good case of saying, like, hey, this was a guy that when he came out of North Carolina had a lot of offensive potential and ability. He kind of struggled efficiency. He shot under 40% his first season, averaging 25 minutes a game, which is not good. But it took him a little longer, but he's been efficient this year, shooting almost 40% from 3, 39.6%. Mm-hmm. So it's good to see. I like that. I agree.
Yeah.
All right, let's go last but certainly not least, the NBA Finals prediction. And throughout the first 2 episodes here, we've talked quite a bit about just different teams and how they've been performing and just kind of some general thoughts on them. But it's time to put our money where our mouth is. Who do you have in the NBA Finals?
I'll start by breaking it down East versus West and then going from there. Eastern Conference, I think we're destined, as much as I've been talking up Philly so much this episode and the last episode, I still think it's a course between Boston and Milwaukee. I think that's ultimately where the Eastern Conference is going to lead. It's just that these two teams are just destined to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. And it pains me. I can't believe I'm doing this. I think Boston's gonna beat Milwaukee to reach the finals. I just think, and this is no like knock against Milwaukee per se. Boston this year, I think Boston's the best team in the league. Mm-hmm. You look at what Drew Holiday has meant to this team. You think Jason Tatum's taken a step. Jaylen Brown's been balling, even though he can only finish with one hand still. Amazing they got a max contract and he can only finish with one hand, but
Good for him.
good for him. I mean, we want to talk about. We didn't even talk about him with most improved, but I think you got a Kristaps Porzingis is having a season. Is having a solid season, and he's staying healthy. So that's a good thing. I mean, Al Horford's still there, and we didn't talk about this guy either, which we left so many names off. Most improved. Why didn't we mention Derek White?
He's too old.
Too old. He looks old. But like they got a squad in Boston right now. And I just don't think Milwaukee has enough depth to compete with Boston's depth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'll make it simple too, because I have the Celtics in the finals as well. I have to ask you this about the Bucks. Do they miss Drew Holiday a little bit? Because
I mean, that's as a fan, I'm happy to have Damian Lillard. Yeah, I mean, it's bitter. It's nice to see Giannis have an offensive option. I think I think this will improve come playoff time because we've seen come playoff time recently the Bucks offense is stalled come clutch moments and come the fourth quarter in the playoffs. And I think that's where Damian Lillard's going to prove his value. And I think it's going to help them come playoff time. So I'm not really taking as much stock in the regular season and Lillard struggles right now because Dame time's going to be Dame time.
yeah, no, that's fair. The reason I was asking is defensively. I mean, they have been so the Bucks for the last 5 years have been one of the elite defensive teams in the league, and they're 9th rated defensively in the Eastern Conference right now. Just in the Eastern Conference, that's pretty not good. So
they're not as bad as the Wizards.
Well, that's not the bar you want to be trying to match. Not even. So we have to make sure we bookmark this because we made fun of the Thunder a ton a few years ago. So is it going to be the Wizards now? So when the Wizards are an elite team in 3 years, we'll go, oh, remember when we used to make fun of the Wizards? But realistically, we'll still be making fun of the Wizards in 3 years because that's just how they're operated.
Yeah, but they're going to be, it's going to be Boston. I mean, it's going to be a series. I think Milwaukee can come out of the East. I think that's perfectly plausible. Just like I think it's perfectly plausible for Philly to come out of these, if we're being completely honest. But moving on to the West, I think it's you call me good. I think it's a 3-team race. I think it's Denver. I think it's the Clippers, depending on health. If Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both stay healthy, it's going to be the Clippers. I think, and then if the Thunder make a big splash and go get someone like Lauri Markkanen or some other big name, because they have 3 million first-round picks for the next 10 years, I think it's time to use them. Use them, pair someone up with Shea and Chet, and the other young pieces you have with Jalen Williams, Carson Wallace. I think it's time. And if they pull the trigger on like Lauri Markkanen, for example, because I say him because that's like the biggest name that OKC's been linked to right now. I think they could challenge in the Western Conference. Will they win the West? Probably not. I still think it's going to be Denver. I think Denver's coming out of the West. Unless Kawhi and Paul George both stay healthy, then it's going to be the Clippers. But I'm just going to say Denver because I don't trust Kawhi and Paul George both stay healthy. So I think it's going to be Boston and Denver, and that pains me only because that's like such a basic pick.
Yeah.
Right now.
You're lame.
I am pretty lame, but like, as for who's gonna win, I think it's gonna be Boston. I think Boston's on it. I think it's time for Boston. Jason Tatum's not even really in the MVP conversation, but he's having a good season. He's having a really good season.
He is, yeah.
Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday. I miss Drew a little bit, but he is offensively. He wasn't what we needed anymore. He wasn't doing it for the Bucks.
For sure.
But I think it's gonna be Boston. I think they're gonna win the championship this season.
It's interesting thinking about some of the teams we haven't brought up. So we haven't talked about the Miami Heat once when we were in the Eastern Conference, and not even in general. So it's interesting to see how they've slipped a little bit. And I mean, you can never fully count them out. Part of the reason I think they're so far down the standing, Jimmy Butler's been banged up, Tyler Hero is banged up. Once they get fully healthy, it's
their best player's been a rookie.
Yeah, that's a team you don't want to play in the playoffs. If they sneak in as like a 6-7 seed, it's a tough out in the first round.
The Knicks are better.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to argue that right now when they're fully healthy, though. I don't know if I could pick the Knicks over the Heat, but anyway, I thought it was interesting. We haven't talked about the Mavericks once. Now that we're in the Western Conference.
That is weird.
Luka, we didn't talk about as an MVP candidate, a guy averaging 33, 8, and 9. Like, the MVP race is just wild. You look at those numbers,
man,
and it's
that is weird.
It's just interesting to think. But I mean, I said it a few years ago, and I stick by it that I think that Luka is a losing player. I just think he's one of those guys that's going to put up huge numbers in his career. But until he plays better defense and he plays as a leader of a team rather than being like, this is all about me, I think it's going to be hard for them to win. And I'm curious how long it takes before people buy into what I'm saying. Because as of right now, if people listening to this here, oh, Luka's a loser, I mean, people would go off saying, well, he's one of the elite players. I'm not saying he's not one of the elite offensive players in the league, but you can be an elite player and still be a losing player, in my opinion. I've always said that. Like, James Harden is a loser.
Although James Harden has a chance this year.
I'm picking the Clippers to go in the Western Conference, by the way.
Ooh.
So I understand the injury concerns, but I always go, and it's the reason why I like the Celtics, and I think the Celtics are winning the NBA Finals. I don't know if anybody in the league has a bigger chip on their shoulder as just a team than the Celtics. They've been so close the last few years, so close, and you could argue the last 2 seasons they could have won the NBA championship. You know that they're fighting and they're playing hard to get that championship, and they have all the elements you need. They have star players that are willing to distribute and play as playmakers with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They have depth pieces like Derek White and Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Like, they have depth, they have defense, they have star power. There's not one thing that the Celtics don't really have at this point. So I don't really know what would stop them except themselves. And I think it's the same thing for the Clippers. And that's not to say it'll be hard to beat the Nuggets. And that's definitely, I wouldn't be shocked if the Nuggets made it. But, is there a little bit of fatigue? They've been an elite team the last few years. They got their championship. I just think the Clippers have a lot to play for. I think Paul George has wanted that championship. I think watching James Harden, the way he's evolved just in the later part of his career.
Oh man,
this
is a moment.
I know. I don't think
take a moment to realize, to take this in time. You are praising James Harden.
Let's not get crazy, but I don't think that at this point, as a 34-year-old, I don't think he's playing like a loser anymore. And
some high praise.
I mean, it is. He's not turning over the ball as much as he has in his career. I think would be his lowest turnover total since 2011, if his stats hold. So he's turning over the ball less. His 3-point percentage is the highest in his entire career, which is insane. His field goal.
The most improved?
James Harden's the most improved, maybe.
Dude, that sounds crazy, but you talking about these numbers? I mean, is that wild?
I mean, it would be pretty wild, but yeah, I mean, he's shooting 42.5% from three this season, which is amazing. I mean, his highest before then was 39% in 2011, and he was playing and shooting the ball a lot less at that point. So, yeah, he's shooting almost 3 more threes a game now. So anyway, and even defensively, he's not a liability. I'd call him like a league average defender. So
Man,
the
this
way
is
that
just
James
a
Harden
moment
is
in time.
playing, it really is, but I give James Harden a lot of credit because he's not the primary scorer or the primary threat on that team. And I didn't know if his ego was going to be too big to where he would ever be able to truly take a step back and go, you know what, this isn't my team anymore. And if I want to win, I need to understand my role and how it's going to lead to us being a better team and winning. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I could go as far to say the same for Russell Westbrook. I don't know if I'm quite ready to make that kind of a leap because I've been even harder on Russell Westbrook than James Harden. But Russell Westbrook has done the same. I just don't think to the same level as James
I mean,
Harden.
you got to think Westbrook. We didn't talk about him as sixth man, but this is probably the role he's going to play for the rest of the season. Is the sixth man coming out the bench?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
having. So I mean, who would have thought that, I don't think he's going to win it, but if we're talking about sixth man of the year, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Russell Westbrook has, especially if the Clippers are to get to where they strive to be. I mean, Russell Westbrook, you gotta talk about how he's performing off the bench. I mean, it's the whole team's not looking great right now because of Kawhi has been hurt, but yeah, the Clippers are, man. I think my only concern, I mean, besides with my predictions is, does Jokic want it enough?
Yeah. No, I agree.
I mean, and that's not a knock on him. He's the best player in the world. He's a champion. And I'm sure, I know he wants to, like, who doesn't want to win a championship? Like, I'm sure he wants to win a championship, but is he hungry for a championship? And I think that's the concern when it comes down. Cause I think the Western Conference Finals is going to be Denver and the Clippers. And that might be the deciding factor. I don't know. The Clippers, you got guys that Kawhi's hungry for another championship. Paul George, James Harden, they want to get a ring. And I don't think anybody wants to get a ring more than Russell Westbrook right now. The way he's kind of.
Yeah.
Pains me to say this, but like falling off from Russell Westbrook, we got. This is just a few years ago. We were talking. This was Mr. Triple Double for a season. And now we're talking about him. He's playing like 20 minutes a game off the bench, but so he still has a role, and he still has a important role. But you got, and he's hungry. I think he's showing sacrifice, and he's right. He wants a championship. So, but that's I think in a couple weeks or in a month, I'm probably gonna end up switching to the Clippers because the more I talk about it.
You can't tell this. You can't. No, this is me now. Let me own this, whether they suck or not.
But I'm still gonna go Denver. I still think they're the most complete team in the West. I think I think they're set up to lose to Boston in the finals.
So more teams that are interesting that we haven't mentioned, just in general. Obviously we can't talk about every single team in every single episode, but
we did not talk about. We talked about in the last episode, but we did not talk about them in this episode.
The Lakers?
Oh, we forgot to mention that we didn't talk about the Golden State here.
We didn't. And the other one that I was going to mention too was actually the Suns, maybe the league's most disappointing team as well. I mean, sitting as the 9th seed, you have the Suns and the 9 seed, the Lakers and the 10, and the Warriors as the 11 right now. Who would have ever thought that in the Western Conference? And
okay,
if the Suns, get their act together, that's dangerous.
That was going to be my question. Pick one of those teams. Which team has the best chance to upset Denver if they were to meet? Like, do you think it's the Sun? Do you think it's the Suns?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not, and this might just be because I've been a big fan of the Warriors. I've been like from afar. I've been really supportive of the Warriors. I'm sorry. I'm not ready to say the Warriors are done yet.
I know
I'm not. I'm
That's
not
okay.
ready. I'm not ready. Okay. I'm not ready to call the Warriors done. I'm sorry, but you got like 50 championships between everybody. I mean, not literally, but you got Steph Curry, who's still playing at an elite level. Clay's got to turn it around, right?
No, he stinks. His career is over.
But we haven't even talked about, and the thing I want,
what about the Pelicans? You love the Pelicans too. Are they gonna make it?
Pelicans, I mean, if Zion stay out of the kitchens and down New Orleans, maybe, I don't know. But I mean, yeah, you got the Pelicans, the Warriors. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, that's what made me think about the West this year. Is there's a lot of. You have Denver and you have the Clippers, but even outside of that, like, we're not talking about Minnesota, and they're the number one as serious contenders. They're the number one seed in the Western Conference right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm showing love to OKC, and I think they're one move away from being title contenders. But, yeah, there's a bunch of I will say this: we know the Wizards will not win the championship.
That's fair. That's a great statement. I have an idea for an episode, and we should talk about this for maybe an upcoming one. Instead of having the MVP, we should have like the anti-awards. So like the player that's been the most disappointing, the rookie that's been the most disappointing team. We should flip everything and talk about how terrible people have been. I think there's too much positivity. I like negativity.
I figured you would say something like that because I feel inside your soul you are just hating yourself for giving James Harden so much praise.
I give credit when credit is due. It's
eating you right now.
It's impressive. He should be proud of himself. I think he deserves a championship for that. So,
all right.
But I think that's all we have for this episode. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Mm-hmm.